when you awaken the dead,
The further you travel,
the riskier your journey will become.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Josh, and today we're going to be talking about Insidious: The Red Door. This is the 5th installment in the Insidious franchise. And just to sort of share my thoughts on the rest of them, I really enjoy the first one. It's a great combination of traditional scares and some more fantastical elements, especially when you get into some of the characters that can astral project and sort of enter another dimension. I really like the way they visualize the further with the really hazy blue hue, the fog, and the echoey sound design. It's just a really cool concept. It's a little bit cheesy, and sure, the first film does rely on jump scares quite a bit, but it's James Wan, so they're very well executed for the most part. Personally, I don't really care for any of the other ones except for maybe 3. That one was decent. 3 and 4 were prequels. This one is going back to follow up the second film. We're back to following the Lambert family. Right from the get-go, I got the feeling that this movie was going to try to invoke a lot of feelings of nostalgia, and I'm just sitting there thinking, nostalgia for what? I mean, this is a movie that came out just over a decade ago. It just really doesn't feel like it warrants the use of nostalgia to try to hook the audience. And as I was watching this, pretty much every single fear that I had came true. The synopsis here is that some years have passed since the Lambert family encountered the spiritual dimension known as the Further. Josh and Dalton were able to wipe their memories of this trauma and free themselves from the demons that were trying to possess them. There's a lot of tension in the family, specifically between Josh and Dalton, who is now fully grown up and now going off to college. Some things happen there that jog his memory, and now the family must once again face off against the lipstick face demon. Sort of. He's actually barely in the movie. This is actually Patrick Wilson's directorial debut. In addition to starring in this film, he did direct it. Sort of a shame that he chose to go with this instead of an original piece of work. Sort of set himself up for failure there. I mean, not financially speaking, because these movies make a lot of money, but in terms of quality, I just wish that he chose something original instead of the sequel to a long-running franchise, but I'm sure he wanted to take whatever he could get. And in all fairness to Wilson, he actually does a pretty fine job directing this. He's nowhere on the level of Leigh Whannell or James Wan. I just think he strays too far away from the wide shots often in favor of the close-ups. It just doesn't really give us the same atmosphere that The Further did in some of the other Insidious films. The cast, for the most part, is pretty good in this too. I was surprised by how good Ty Simpkins is as Dalton, fully grown up now. It's the same actor who played him when he was a little kid, and he's since been able to act in some other things like Jurassic World, Iron Man 3, and last year's The Whale, which he was also very good in. And buried deep within this screenplay, I do think there is an interesting message about coping with trauma, coming together as a family, and trying to face your fears rather than bury them and try to forget them. But it really doesn't come to fruition. And there's a fundamental problem with this story that I just can't get past, and that's the fact that through a majority of the film, the characters are trying to solve a mystery that we as an audience already know the answer to. We're just waiting patiently for them to catch up and figure it out again, and that becomes really tedious after a little bit. The movie is also just not very scary at all. There are only 2 sequences that I can think of off the top of my head that actually sort of unsettled me. The first of which takes place in an MRI machine. That was really clever and claustrophobic, so props to Wilson if he came up with that idea. The other scene takes place at a frat party that Dalton and his new friend attend. Again, nothing extraordinary or anything, but it was a little bit creepy. The rest is all just generic bait and switch jump scare junk food that we've grown way too used to in the horror community, and 2 decent scares just aren't enough to carry the rest of this horror film. I feel that there's way too much of Dalton just acclimating to his new school and making friends there. I just didn't really care too much, even though, again, I think Ty Simpkins does a fine job reacclimating into the role. The so-called payoff that we get in the 3rd act is really disappointing and anticlimactic. Again, the sort of star of the show here is the lipstick face demon, the red-faced one. He's sort of the cover of every Insidious project, and he's just barely in the movie at all, and when he is there, I didn't find him scary or intimidating. Watching this just really begs the question of why any of this needed to exist at all, because from where I stand right now, this just feels like a completely needless retread into the Further that offers nothing new that we haven't seen before. Again, I think there is potential here for an interesting family dynamic and an interesting message, but it's buried under this mass of nostalgia, and the fact that it's mostly just a boring, lumbering, generic retread of all of the other Insidious films. It really does sadden me that I can't think of more redeeming qualities here because, again, horror is my favorite genre. I always like to find redeeming qualities, but this is going to be a 2 out of 5 stars for me. I'm happy for Patrick Wilson, but this is just a big old dud. So there you have it, guys. Those are my brief thoughts on Insidious the Red Door. Be sure to drop down into the comments and let me know what you think of the film. Also, how would you rank the Insidious movies? I don't know if I'll get the chance to make a video about them, so I'll just say I think this might be the worst one. After that, maybe 4, then 2. 3 again I think is decent, and 1 will always be the best to me. It's the only entry in the franchise that I think is truly great. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks again for checking this out.